Everyone, welcome to the 5th episode of We, the Next Generation. I'm your host, Ethan McKellar, and I am very excited about today's episode as we are going to cover the topic of the conflict in Gaza. And of course, we're going to see Gianna out in Washington Square Park also chatting with young voters, which is exciting again. But to start us off, we're going to talk about this week's headlines. Kamala Harris went on Fox News, which is great for reaching the other side of the aisle, obviously, as most of Fox News viewers are known to be more conservative. So she is definitely trying to do her best to meet, voters on the other side of the aisle. However, we don't know how well that did for Trump or Fox News, as we saw that the interviewer really didn't let Kamala Harris talk much. If you're wondering now what Trump did this week, he headed to McDonald's to take a shift there because he has a weird obsession with Kamala Harris working at McDonald's in her youth. People have called it, weird. People have called it kind of trailing her in a way, trying to appear more down to earth. And again, people just kind of see it as him being obsessed with her past, and the fact that it kind of does ground her in a sense of, reality and middle classness is kind of what she's, repeated in all of her interviews. And additionally, kind of a personal sense of news, Elon Musk visited, ironically, my old high school in Ridley Township, Pennsylvania. Ridley and Delaware County is known as a swing state, swing county. It can go any way. It's gone both ways in recent elections. And it's interesting that Elon Musk visited. And in addition, it also sparked some conversation in my town about should political rallies be held at high schools. Now, I obviously have a personal connection to this, and so I did take to social media to kind of comment on my belief. Again, I want to make sure to emphasize that this belief that I'm going to read to you is not one-sided on political sides, but is really just about the general idea that political rallies shouldn't be held at high schools. So I'll read to you what I said. Here's a picture of Elon Musk at my high school, and I wrote, "Here it is, a Trump rally at Ridley High School. It's not about political affiliation because we know both sides wouldn't be happy about a political rally at a high school on a school day immediately following a school day with kids leaving the building. It has been a struggle to access the high school facilities for other educational and arts-related programs, but without any prior knowledge to the public or parents, this rally can be held. There's nothing wrong with political rallies in general. Please go and share your beliefs and ideas and make your case for your candidates to win, but a high school is not the place. Unfortunately, the damage has been done. The students will feel as though the school has made a choice. Some will feel accepted and others will feel neglected. Is that the type of school we want our kids to attend?" So that was my personal opinion on the issue. And again, I don't typically share my personal opinion on things, but I felt like this was really a kind of hopefully a bipartisan issue, right? Something that we can all agree at, that we shouldn't be influencing these politics, one-sided politics in schools. And this has kind of sparked a conversation. The school board and the superintendent finally did respond to in a public statement and emails to parents. It was said that parents and teachers weren't notified until literally that middle of the school day, early in the school day. And the real kicker of it all is that earlier that day, in that morning, they had a school lockdown drill. So you can obviously take all of that information and digest it how you wish. My last piece of news is, I think, a positive one, even though the history of it isn't really a positive one, but the current action is a positive one. An 81-year-old woman has voted for the first time. This is only, though, the reason it's her first time is because her husband died. Watch this to understand more.
I'm 81 today, but Sunday I'll be 82.
Betty Cartledge has seen a lot in her 81 years, but she's never seen the inside of a voting booth. Well, that was until Wednesday afternoon.
I'm in the vote for the first time in my life.
Betty, with the help of her niece Wanda, voted for the very first time at this polling location in Covington. She says she never voted before because her husband didn't think she should. Last year, her husband died. This year, Betty voted.
I was so young and everything when we got married, I didn't ever think about it. And then when I got old, I still didn't think about it. It would count.
As for Betty,
She's helping me out of that building.
while she had a little help leaving the polling place, she says it was an experience she clearly waited a lifetime for.
And it was neat. It was good.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you very
And she'll
much.
be back again. Yes, I will.
You'll be back again.
If I'm here, I'm going to be back. All right.
Obviously, that is, a interesting fact that she has finally been able to vote because she hasn't had the suppression of her husband. And it makes us ask ourselves kind of what is happening. Is that still happening in households today? Are we finding that votes are being suppressed, not on a larger standpoint from lawmakers and politicians, but maybe in our own homes? So it's really important to get out and vote and understand that, suppression is happening in people's homes all over. So now we're going to go into our conversation with our guest Mateo today, who is going to chat with us about the conflict in Gaza. All right, everyone, we are here with Mateo, who is going to chat about the conflict in Gaza. We are so excited to have you on. I know this is an issue that you and I have chatted about in length before, and it's something that we value. I think Gen Z values this issue greatly, and so the fact that we have it 2 weeks before the election really does hopefully center that this is an issue that's important for Gen Z. But before we go into this issue, I would love for you to introduce yourself. Tell the audience who you are.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mateo Gutierrez. I'm a New Jersey-based filmmaker. My pronouns are he, they. I'm a public servant as my day job, and I'm a filmmaker by night. That's what I like to say. And I guess I would also like to start, I am not the most well-qualified person to speak about Gaza. There are many other public sources. You could follow Wizard Beast on Instagram, Motaz. You could follow New Jersey for Palestine. There are many local resources on the internet. If you go on any Twitter thread that blows up, you will see people linking to GoFundMes, donations. It is all out there. Just because you're not seeing it on your local primetime news doesn't mean it's not there. It's there. And I'm the least qualified person to talk about it, but I'm glad I could be here to talk about it.
I think one of the reasons we were really excited to have you on because you definitely expressed, you are one of our creatives in F14, and I think that the power of expressing it in conversation and talking about it in conversation, something that some people want to shy away from. I think the fact that you are so expressive about wanting to have that conversation and the importance of keeping it into the conversation, I think does make you in a way a qualified guest. So I want to make sure that we, establish that for yourself, because I think that it's not being talked enough about. Do you feel that right now in the world or in our generation, or?
I think it's like a 50-50. And not to put you guys on blast, but even on your previous podcast episodes, you go through voters' issues, and a majority of them are the same ones that have been tattled off for the last 10 or so years, but none of them have discussed foreign policy, or more specifically, the genocide in Gaza, because that's what it is. It's not a war. It's a genocide. Just want to make that very clear to the audience at home. And it's disheartening. It's definitely it definitely makes everyday life feel like I don't know, disillusioned a lot of the time, and it's very self-pitying to just like sit here and talk about how it makes me sad, but I think it's important to at least come at it from an emotional standpoint. It's there, it's real, and it has an effect, I think, on anybody who pays attention to it. It's hard not to pay attention to it. So the question I at least ask myself a lot of the time is like, how many of my peers are not looking at it, are choosing to look away from it? I have to be candid. I myself cannot always tolerate it. I don't think the human mind can truly is equipped to handle all these graphic images, all the death, and it's publicized. Like, it's there. It's not like you can dispute it. You really can't, which is tough.
Yeah, I think it is obviously, it's, for people who do really kind of advocate for, bringing attention to what's happening, and to see other people kind of not, do that is definitely disparaging. And obviously, as you said, like, to see what's going on over there, the genocide's going over there is horrific to not kind of bring it to light and bring it to conversation over here. Do you feel like that conversation is, you kind of said it generally with the public, but what about in the presidential election? Do you find that it's being discussed enough? Do you think that candidates could do better at bringing this to light?
I think if Kamala wanted to win, she really should have started from a place of empathy for Palestine. And it's very clear from the way she's been leading in the last few weeks that is not what she's going for. She's definitely going for the moderate campaign in order to align the most votes in her favor. And, that could be a smart strategy, but it is 2024. The people who care about these things are your primary voter base now, and they are very vocal. You have students all across the country over this last year protesting, getting assaulted by campus police, being downtrodden by their faculty, by the president of Columbia University. It's shocking. It's shocking that in a presidential election, one that they are using the same tagline they've used before, it's the most important election of our lifetime, that you would not talk about the most important issue of our lifetime. And I think a lot of that has to do with many of the false claims that came out initially from October 7th. One such as, I have from Associated Press here, they reported 2 claims of sexual violence committed by Hamas were actually false. A man named Shaim Otmazga, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, claimed he invented the story because he could not think of any other option and corrected his claim after the fact. And a lot of these claims that came out from that day have cast a really dark image about Palestine, which I think is just fueled by a lot more internalized hatred that is not being discussed. It's not being whittled down.
And why do you think that is not being discussed as much as?
Because it makes people uncomfortable. It makes you have to question what has changed in all these years in terms of how we as a society think and progress, if we progress. When I was a young kid, one of my first memories was my uncle being very upset at George Bush for his response to the Middle East. As a kid, I didn't understand it. I just saw my uncle mad at the then president. Now as an adult, I get it a little more. And I understand that there's the retaliation America had towards Iran was extreme.
And
we seem to be falling into the same missteps. It's just history repeating itself in the most disturbing way. And it's because it makes people uncomfortable. You have to question how you look at the world every day. No one is perfect. No one has a perfect morality. I don't think anyone should try for that.
Right.
They should just try to look at the world in a good moral way, but don't try to be a perfect moral person, because that's not possible.
Right. And it's so interesting in the sense that we found with George W. Bush and his, retaliation, well, not even retaliation, but attack on, Iran and Iranian people, we found that was based in kind of definitely this racism and this kind of idea that we needed to target someone to prove something.
Yeah.
Obviously after 9/11, even though it was based in unfactual evidence and all these things that really we found that had, some not even connection to 9/11. You know what I mean? And that's what's kind of, as you said, we're seeing happening right now, is that there is this kind of long-standing belief that America needs to support Israel. And that's kind of what, since the creation of Israel, United States has backed, Israel. Why do you think the shift is happening with younger voters compared to older voters? And why do you think older voters are so kind of stuck in their mind that is kind of who we're supporting, who we're supposed to support, sorry?
Good question. I think a lot of it can very simply be tied down to like social media. We live in a very social age, in the good ways and in bad ways, and as I mentioned previously, like we just, the exposure's there. We can see these things. People in Palestine can share the atrocities of their everyday life.
Right.
That's happening right now as we have this conversation on this couch. And older voters might look at that and call it an echo chamber, as a lot of people like to ascribe to social media, which is fair, because it's all algorithms. You follow people, you see things that inflate your own biases, and that's a very valid place to come from. Where I personally believe, this isn't just my belief and stance, where I think it stops becoming less echo chambery and more fact is when it becomes undeniable. And I think it is an undeniable thing that there is a genocide occurring and there's evidence of it. And older voters might just be more concerned with a lot of the same issues they've been concerned about since they were voting, since they were younger, since they were our age, that's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Do you, so it is kind of interesting about social media, though. How do you find that advocacy has kind of shifted over social media? Do you find that, people have been able to reach people better through kind of, social media advocacy? Or do you find that that's not the way to go to really truly reach advocacy for it?
That's a bit of a tough question, because you kind of have to ask yourself, what is advocacy? I could say advocacy is having a dialogue about it, sharing it on your social platforms. Some people would say advocacy is being rightfully upset about it, showing up to protests, donating to funds to help people in need. And then other people could not really care about advocacy. It's a weird, tricky age we live in where it's hard to really, I don't know if I'm making sense, but it's just strange. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think it's hard because there is an importance of presenting what's happening, and advocacy is kind of bringing things forward. But there are some, I think what you're kind of getting at is like there also is then the action behind advocacy. It's not just kind of advocating for something. Yeah. There's action behind it, kind of donating, right? That's a way to kind of actually have action behind your advocacy, which is definitely an important part. It kind of now shifting to a larger kind of idea of the U.S.'s, interaction with global affairs and global issues. Do you find, you said this is like history repeating itself. Do you find that there will hopefully be a shift in younger generations staying out of kind of, conflicts that, they don't need to, or kind of interfere in conflicts that, they don't need to? Or do you find that this will continue to be a cycle?
I guess it depends on the conflict, right? When is right to get involved? I would say it's right to get involved when, not to keep going back to it, but it is the topic, when there's a genocide going on. That's when you get involved. That's when you use your voice. That's when you use your platform. That's when you organize and you make your voices known and heard that you don't want your money to fund terrible things like this. And then where I might say you draw a line in being involved is, if America is a superpower, maybe they should not be retaliating so aggressively against, let's say, Iran, hypothetically, as if that didn't just happen, right? But
yeah, and we're also seeing that, like, there's actual repercussions of when the U.S. has, sent military aid to Israel, and then we're seeing exactly kind of the negative actions that are happening. There's a correlation there, and it's interesting in the sense that this isn't a bigger issue in Congress to stop the military aid, right? Because of what's happening over there. Obviously, it's starting to be, and there's conversation about it, but
it's very confounding.
Yeah.
It does. I have to think about that every day. Whenever I do think about it, and I can't suppress those thoughts, because it's just, as a person, if I have the power, why would I not put my foot down and say, I'm not going to let us be part of this and do this. But it continues every day. It doesn't make any sense. And not to use a line from so many people, but as a tax-paying American, I don't appreciate that my taxes are going towards killing children, towards killing families, towards leveling Gaza, which has been leveled, to quote Bisan. And, it's been over a year.
All right, we're going to take a real quick break from our conversation with Mateo, and we're going to go with Gianna to Washington Square Park.
Hi, my name is Gianna Joyce, and you're here at Washington Square Park to get real with G. Hi, my name is Gianna. What's your name?
KJ.
Slay. Lovely to meet you, KJ.
Lovely to meet you.
So, number one, are you registered to vote?
Yes.
Slay, as you should be. Where are you registered to vote?
In Miami, 305.
Period. And how do you feel about that? Like, how do you feel about how your vote matters where you're voting?
Unfortunately, Florida's a swing state due to the highly Republican north of Florida and the Panhandle in Central Florida. But I'm in South Florida and it's pretty blue down there. But it's always up in the air each year, so that's kind of worrying.
Slay. So, you feel like you really want to contribute your voice to Florida?
Absolutely, because there might be more red than blue usually.
Period. Okay, another question. If you were to ask Donald Trump any question, what would it be?
A respectful question.
Whatever your heart desires.
I'd ask him if he actually fact checks anything that he says, and where does he get the statistics that he spurts out.
Name?
Hi, I'm Sydney.
Hi, Sydney.
I'm Ria.
Oh, I love your blue lashes.
Thank you.
They're
Yeah,
really
right?
cute. Slay. Okay, number one question. Are you registered to vote?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. Slay.
Yes. Like
And-
girls vote.
Period.
Yes.
And where are you registered to vote?
Connecticut. Connecticut for me as well.
Okay, great. How do you feel like your vote matters in Connecticut?
I definitely will still be voting.
Yeah.
It's
Yes,
important.
I
The popular
agree.
vote is important, and we're gonna make it work.
Period.
Yeah.
If you had one question for Donald Trump, if you had the opportunity to ask it, what would it be?
One question.
Yeah. I love this. Hot girls thing.
We're taking our time.
No, I know. The hot girls thing.
I'm trying to not be an asshole about it. You know what I mean? I'm really trying to you go first. Babe.
I would be like, what, from your own perspectives, what was your inspiration, growing up? How did these, I'm just curious, was it, from his family? I don't know, I just feel like I need more of a background of, where these perspectives have come from.
I would love to know why you think you have the right to tell me what to do with my own body. You know? Yeah.
And
Why?
said, what's your name?
Josie.
Slay, Josie. Lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Yeah. What's one question that you would ask Donald Trump if you had the opportunity to?
I would say that right now with the country whose foundation was built upon immigration, why he feels to treat them so harshly
Ooh.
and resort to literally the border is it's not safe for immigrants at all.
Period.
And they're covering themselves aluminum blankets, being locked away in rooms with no sunlight at all.
Yeah.
Children being separated from their families. It's very cruel. So
Period.
I just want to know does he think that's truly appropriate?
Period. I love that for you. Okay. What's one question you would ask Kamala Harris if you had the opportunity to?
One question I would ask Miss Kamala, I would say that with her run with Biden, it hasn't been the most successful.
Mm.
So how will she, moving forward now being the head person in charge, do things differently than she did before?
Period. Good question.
Yeah.
Good answer, Steve. Good answer.
Perfect.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Mwah.
Now, back to our conversation with Mateo.
Today, I was doing work for a project for F14, and I took a break. And part of that break involved a little scroll. In that scroll is a 7-minute video from Bisan where she's discussing the geography of Palestine and how Israel has been targeting select areas and cutting off access to certain areas that doesn't make any sense to invade and to separate. And you know, it's so hard to go back to just trying to work, to go back to my 9 to 5, to go back to my creative work, and not just let that fester. And I think it informs some of how I carry myself now as a person. So
yeah, I totally hear that. And I think that, you know, it's so interesting in this time when, you know, the 2024 election, we're finding that Kamala Harris, as you said, is kind of stuck in this middle place where she's trying to win older voters, middle ground voters that maybe, you know, are more, in the middle ground about this issue. But you know, she is going to alienate younger voters or voters who
she already has.
Right.
It's already been done. It was already done the day she gave her speech at the DNC. And she didn't even mention Gaza or Israel, but as a voter, what really alienated me that day was her speech emphasizing a militant power in America. There are other avenues to focus as we go into the future. Today it was 80 degrees in October. Climate is an issue. It's a big issue for me as a voter. And when Kamala's saying she supports fracking, that's like it's a catch-22, because why you say you're for the climate and then you support fracking.
Right. But we do see obviously a very direct correlation to why she's saying that is to get voters.
No, yeah,
right. Like, because Pennsylvania voters are, you know, obviously very some Pennsylvania voters are obviously very for fracking, and because it's a business solution for us. So
she's striking the right chords that she needs to, but she's also losing the votes that count in this effort to maintain the same position the Democrats have held for quite a while in America.
Right.
And it's history repeating itself. It feels a lot like the 2016 election. That was a nightmare outcome. This is also a nightmare outcome should they go the other way.
Yeah. Well, that's kind of what I want to kind of round to was to obviously the other side of the issues, Donald Trump, right? And his support he also supports, you know, that's something that ironically they both kind of share, is a support of, and it's because there's this long-standing obviously older generation, maybe not our generation, but older standing, that they support Israel. So that solution isn't either a great one for our generation. For voters, though, right? What do you say to voters who are like, young voters, you know, like us, who are like, well, neither one is going to solve us on that issue, or even on climate. Both haven't said much on climate. How do we reach those voters that are like, well, maybe I just won't vote?
Well, what I would say is it's as radical as that. Respectfully, my foundations lie in radicalism. I'm not going to go there for the sake of a polite conversation. But that being said, it is an easy choice, because Donald Trump is a menace to society, to the future. He is, I'm his biggest hater. If there's anybody who is a hater against that man, it is me. I had a very bad experience with one of his supporters as a child. And it's not to say it shaped my worldview for all of them, but there's a consistency in that voter group. As for Kamala, there's also a consistency in their voter group, and I would just suggest to voters that you do your research and listen. Just like, don't vote for the orange man. Don't do that. It is, and if you don't want to vote, much like Chapo Rowan has not endorsed a candidate, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you are. I'm not going to sit here and belittle you if you don't vote. That's not where we should be going in the face of this last year. In the face of really, what is it? How many is it? Like 69 years? Al Jazeera reports it's been 69 years since this has started. That's insane.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't. I keep saying this, and I'm sorry, but it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And I was very hopeful when they announced that she would be running, because I thought maybe just for a second, she would draw the line and she would stand on the right side of history, and maybe this could be a very easy win for her. But she's made it very tough for her.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, Charlie XCX could say Kamala's brat, and we don't even have to get into how that is a very polarizing thing for a lot of people, including for anyone who's a fan of Charlie, myself included. Yeah, I've been yapping for a while. Sorry.
No, I hear you. No, I think that's great. I think it's great points, and I think it does kind of give a little bit of an insight of why this election's so close. Why the line is really right there for both of them. That she's got to meet all voters, and our voter group is just as important and has a very loud voice in this issue, right? And I think that to sum this whole conversation up, I think something that we've said multiple times, that's a great point, is that history repeats itself. And that if we kind of allow candidates and presidents to continue their, influence in foreign policy as they have, history will repeat itself.
Yeah, that's scary.
So I think that's a great place to kind of wrap it up and sum it up, and hope that history doesn't repeat itself in that way.
Keep the faith, and again, look at the Twitter threads. Follow Bison, follow Motaz. Like, it's there. Just because Fox News, ABC News, CBS, NBC, just because it's not being platformed there, does not mean it's not happening. There is a genocide. I'm gonna say it again. It's happening. Yeah. Brat Autumn, I guess.
Well, thanks, Mateo, for coming on. And we appreciate you having this conversation. You're always welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone, that is our episode for today. We want to thank you all for listening and watching with us. And again, a reminder that I think as of filming this, we're 15 days. By the time it comes out, we'll be less away from this election. Get out and vote, and make your voice heard. We are trailing and getting there day by day. Join us next Thursday and every Thursday for We, the Next Generation.